Before I start the actual review, I must say that I'm a big fan of Atlas Lens Company. Their lenses are a huge step towards making anamorphics accessible, and accessibility is all my work is about. I'm not saying they are cheap, but they are certainly cheaper than all the other cine anamorphics in the market right now, and that is fantastic. I got the Orion 40mm back in December of 2018 when I went to Connecticut to spend the holidays with my girlfriend's family. My flight came through New York, and Nick Kova, who I met through this channel, offered to lend me his recently delivered Orion 40mm for the 2 weeks I was there. I am super thankful to Nick for trusting me with his lens, and so should you, otherwise this review would not exist. I'm unable to lie, I had a blast shooting with the Orion 40mm. This was actually my first time using a proper cine anamorphic lens, and it changed many things on how I perceive anamorphic shooting. First of all, 40mm with 2x scope is incredibly wide. I'm used to shoot with both eyes open, one eye in the viewfinder for focusing and the other eye on my surroundings for my movement. And this was the first time I felt a lens was just as wide as my natural field of view. One might think a wide angle is good for establishing shots, but the close focus capabilities of this lens allowed me to make some of my most interesting close-up shots, showing a fair amount of background along with my subject. I shot all the footage using both the Sony a7S II and the Panasonic GH5. And while the GH5 has its own anamorphic mode, the Sony offered no support, making an external monitor key to framing. Due to gear incompatibility and form factor, I wanted to stay as small and light as possible. I ended up shooting everything handheld. Handheld as in camera plus lens plus sometimes a monitor on the hot shoe mount. And this made for some really shaky shots every once in a while. It made for a huge arm workout, wobbliness in some of the footage as you can see, and the ability to stuff the camera in my backpack when I was not shooting, which was very convenient. Not to mention, every rack focus shot was a finger workout. Even though the lens can go to T2, I found my sweet spot to be between T2.8 and T4 for best out of focus areas and decent sharpness that I could boost in post-production without hurting the footage. If I had the money right now, I would not bat an eye investing in one of these. Among the whole Orion lineup, I feel the 40mm is the most versatile and interesting focal length. I shot for full 2 weeks with it, and I never felt I needed a longer or a wider lens. The price tag is still prohibitive if you're comparing this to adapters, but the reliability of it makes up for a big chunk of that cost difference. A cine lens will not let you down or have you struggling with clamps, focus, diopters, and whatnot. This is where I'm headed in terms of investing, getting out of adapters and moving into cinema anamorphics. What are the downsides of the Orion 40mm then? Some people claim it is a really soft lens, but that was not my experience. Sure, at T2 things get a bit mushy, but no lens is super sharp wide open. I was doing great at T2.8, and I feel the lens loses its magic past 5.6 because the background starts to blend with your subject in terms of sharpness. Bokeh feels strange at times, and flares are quite saturated. Those two aspects do not bother me, but they might be red flags for other shooters. The first thing I noticed when I picked up the case with this lens is that this baby is heavy. It is a solid cup of metal filled with thick slabs of glass. At 2.2 kilograms or 5 pounds, the Orion 40mm made both the A7S and the GH5 feel like little toys. Not only heavy, the lens is also pretty big. 18.9 centimeters or 7.4 inches in length with a 114mm or 4.5 inches front, which is a standard value for cinema lenses, making it compatible with countless accessories such as filters and matte boxes. The gigantic front made me work extra hard to find perfect lighting, since I was unable to rely on a variable ND. I had packed the PhotoDiox ND throttle adapter, which has a built-in variable ND, and that made things a lot easier for shooting with the A7S too. Speaking of adapters and lens mounts, the Orions come in PL mount by default, with an optional EF mount at extra cost. The one I used was already fitted with an EF mount, And if you are swapping mounts on your own, you will end up using a handful of shims provided by Atlas to adjust your flange distance properly. I have heard from a few different sources, including a rental house, that this is a time-consuming challenge, especially because it's hard to spot critical focus when the lens is wide open and tell if you have the perfect distance between the lens mount and the camera sensor. Still on the subject of weight and size, all my adapters sucked. There was a noticeable amount of play either between the lens and the adapter or between the adapter and the camera body because of how heavy the lens actually is. The adapters I was using for the Sony were the PhotoDiox Pro Fusion and D-Throttle and the Metabones Mark IV. The Panasonic GH5 had the Lens Turbo V2 for focal reducing capabilities. I have been using these adapters for years without having this issue before. And there are a couple of ways to solve this play. One of them would be to use adapters that have a foot for support and connect the foot to the rig's rails or the camera cage. And this addresses the body and adapter play. The Metabones and the PhotoDiox had a foot, but I was shooting without a rig, silly me, so I couldn't solve it. And the second part is to use a Cine type adapters, and those are made by Metabones. They have a twist lock onto the lens like a Cine camera does. And these are on my list for future upgrades. I only noticed the play was visible on the footage many weeks after I edited the videos and had to throw out way too many shots due to the footage looking extra wobbly. This was not the Orion's fault in any way. It was mostly my loose adapters, lack of a proper rig, image stabilization going crazy with anamorphic, and rolling shutter plus slow motion on the A7S II, which are known Sony issues. Focus goes from infinity down to 0.56 meters or 2 feet at minimum focus with 300 degrees of throw. Iris ranges between T2 and 16, featuring 14 aperture blades for smooth oval bokeh. As one would expect from a Cine lens, both rings are geared for motors follow focus, and the lens does not change size while focusing since all the movement is internal. That also means that the front does not rotate, which is great. Hashtag is Kurama flaws. There's a fair amount of focus breathing, widening your field of view by about 5% when focused at infinity compared to minimum focus. It is not a big deal on most shots, but if you have a big rack focus, you will definitely feel it. 5% at 40mm 2x anamorphic is a pretty big deal, as you can see. In terms of price, since October of 2019, each Orion lens costs roughly $9,000. A $5,000 deposit with the remaining $4,000 to be paid before delivery. Talking to Dan Keynes and Forrest Schultz at NAB this year, I learned that the average waiting time between putting down an order and receiving your lenses is roughly 6 months. There are 3 lens sets of Orions, and the 40mm is the wide angle of the original set, or the A set, matched by 65mm and 100mm lens. Buying a set is not cheaper than buying individual lenses. The set costs 27 grand and each lens costs 9 grand, and the set is split into an $8,000 deposit and a $19,000 payment before delivery. The deposits are all refundable, and you can easily upgrade from a single lens deposit to a full set deposit. My space for shooting these charts was limited, so the focusing range is short. Still, many things can be seen from these samples. Taken with the Panasonic GH5, these images have a higher pixel count than the usual ones I use from the A7S II, allowing for closer inspection on how the lens performs. At T2, the Orion is quite soft, but you can still tell critical focus and read small text, even 10 feet away or 3 meters. There's lots of blooming on all highlights in the center, intensified by purple fringing on high contrast edges. The blooming and fringing dials down towards the corners where we see the usual loss of sharpness and considerable light fall off, about half a stop difference between the center and the corners. The text is still pretty readable though. As we stop down to T2.8, which is my favorite stop for this lens, the blooming goes away and the purple tinge is put under control. The image is not as sharp as 5.6 or 11, but calling this lens soft at this point seems like ignorance. The corners are still quite unsharp, not much improvement over wide open, and just a little bit darker than the center, less than a quarter stop, so we improved on the light fall off. The subtle light fall off actually and the softness in the corners at this point contribute to creating mood in the shots, narrowing attention to the subject and not to over-detailed corners. Speaking of detail, the lens is sharp from 5.6 onwards. Corners improve noticeably with just tiny smudges at the very edges and very little light fall off. Not much changes as you stop down from there, as we can see from T11. Sharpness still goes up a touch, making it sharp edge to edge, and light distribution across the frame is the biggest difference at this point, with much more uniform values from the center to the edges. The one odd thing is, at minimum focus, 2 feet, we start to see some yellow-blue fringing on high contrast edges at the lens when stopped down, which were not there at faster stops and are not quite visible when the subject is placed further away. You can download the full resolution images used to make these charts here and inspect them on your own. The link is in the description right below. With a horizontal field of view equivalent of a 20mm lens, it is expected that the Orion 40mm shows some warping on straight lines. Anamorphic distortion is a big deal, and it greatly contributes to making shots more immersive, creating an extra layer of depth onto a two-dimensional image. Here's an animated grid going from rectilinear, or perfect lines, to the Orion's distortion profile. Notice how the vertical lines have very little movement compared to the horizontal ones. The Orion streak flares are a rich, saturated blue, which honestly, it's a stone's throw from SLR Magic's flares. I like them because this blue is such a specific hue, it can easily be picked in post-production and adjusted to my liking, including color changes to some extent. You can also see some teal elements reflected in there, as well as a short vertical streak that adds more dimension to the overall anamorphic flare. We also have some rainbows when the light source is up close to the lens, and all in all, blooming is pretty controlled for having a light source pointed directly at the lens. On such a wide angle, the flare becomes smaller and smaller as I walk away from camera, meaning that if you want bigger flares from far away, you should work on getting some big and strong light sources. Did anyone say M18s? If you want to see more flare samples, Premium Beat has a free pack of Orion 40mm flares that you can take a look. When I was testing for bokeh, looking at a Christmas tree, everything looked great, but I noticed the bokeh can have a strange shape at times. I like to call it Snowman Bokeh, although it looks more like a bell shape. And you can see it right here in this shot. I do not know what causes this shape, and in some other scenarios, as bokeh approaches the edges of the frame, it starts to get cut off into triangle and bean shapes. From my empirical observations, this has to do with the placement of the highlights in the frame and the focus distance on the lens. On close-ups, these strange shapes almost never show up. But as soon as I start to get further away from my subject, bokeh would get messy. All of this to say that you can get amazing bokeh with the Orion 40mm, but you also run into the risk of getting some strange shapes in there. Speaking of ovals, I noticed the stretched bokeh is not quite oval. Here's a quick comparison between the lens's actual bokeh versus what an oval would be. If anything, the Orion has even more stretched out of focus highlights, contributing for extra waterfall effect and subject separation. According to the data sheet on Atlas's website, also shown right here, the Orions cover a 31mm image circle. What does that mean? In quick terms, it means you are fine shooting with any Super 35 sensor for any ARRI Alexa on the 4x3 3.4K open gate mode, or the Red Gemini at 5K 6x5 anamorphic mode. And let's all agree the Gemini is the best red camera in the market right now to shoot anamorphic. In my situation, the GH5 was absolutely fine with 4x3 anamorphic open gate mode, even with the focal reducer attached. The interesting bit was to realize that I could shoot fine on the Sony a7S II if I was outputting a 2.4:1 crop using the center of the frame. On the first day, however, I did not bother testing the sensor coverage on the Sony and shot some slow motion footage using the a7S's Super 35 crop mode. This yields full coverage from the Orion and delivers a wild 3.56 to 1 aspect ratio of 2x scopes and 16:9 sensors. I particularly like this width and believe one can make very interesting projects with it, although I admit it's not the friendliest of aspect ratios. When I started writing this review, I had not gone through all the tests and the data. All I had were my notes and my thoughts about the experience of shooting with the Orion 40mm. After a few days of looking at clips, creating distortion maps, analyzing flares in bokeh, drawing diagrams, and interpreting charts, I like the 40mm better than when I had only my thoughts. I can now notice and point out hard evidence of features I love about this lens, and also be on the watch for its limitations. I'm pleased by its distortion and focal length. 40mm is unattainable with 2x adapters. It allows for very strong compositions. Bokeh could be cleaner when we look at the snowman and triangular shapes, and if I am to be very nitpicky, flares could be less vivid for a straight out of camera delivery type of situation. It is unfair to compare cine anamorphic lens to adapters, but I'll do it anyway. The amount of time and stress I saved by having a single piece of gear to connect to the camera and head out to shoot made a huge impact on the images I produce. You can look at my previous videos, there are longer samples of the shots contained here, and compare. I had time to get perfect exposure. I was able to plan a shoot for magic hour and actually get it. I shot some pretty spontaneous stuff too, which would have been impossible had I spent 10 minutes fiddling with an adapter rig. I know I am not the only one that struggles with adapters, especially at the beginning of any shoot, and this is where cinema gear makes a difference and justifies its price tag. Skip alignment checks, clamp quirks, diopters, and skip triple testing every piece of the optical chain to make sure the lenses are in focus. Check infinity on the taking lens, check infinity on the anamorphic, check focus on the variable strength diopter. All of those things are already built into the Orion, or any cine lens for that matter. And if one chooses to focus on the negative side of things without any base in reality, one could argue that the lens is too big and heavy when compared to, let's say, an Iskorama 36 or a Kowa B&H. But once the adapter rig is fully built, single focus and bulletproof, it will be just shy of the Orion's weight and size. In some cases, the adapter rig will be bigger and heavier. The price tag is steep compared to adapters, and even being the absolute cheapest anamorphic lens in the Cinema League, $8,000, $9,000 is no pocket change. The issue here is that it is accessible enough compared to Zeiss's or Cooke's anamorphics at $30,000+, creating a feeling of just out of reach that upsets the prosumer market. I made up my mind, and if I have the chance, I will get one of these for myself. I want to put it on a proper rig and shoot content other than tests with it. In all honesty, I am done stressing with adapters for my career, and this is a perfect seg into better gear to match my skills, while not giving up the budget aspect I value so much. If you made it this far into this review, I would like to hear what you think in the comments below. Please like this video and subscribe. I'm Chito Fahadans, and I'll see you next week.